Jesus spent much of his life and ministry on or near the water, specifically on the Sea of Galilee. Today, I am on location filming this devotion for us this week, not at the Sea of Galilee, but at Long Branch State Park and Long Branch Lake, to help us understand what might have been happening in some of Jesus' stories and life and ministry. One particular story happens in Luke chapter 8. Starting in verse 22, Jesus tells his disciples to get into a boat. As they get into the boat, they're preparing to go across the Sea of Galilee. Many of Jesus' disciples had been on this lake many times. Several of them were fishermen, and prior to joining Jesus on a life of ministry and mission, they had spent many hours fishing in these waters. But this particular day, it seemed to be different. Jesus was in the boat with them, and they began to go across the sea. But at night, a huge squall or storm came up, and the boat was getting swamped, Luke tells us, and the disciples were deathly afraid. Jesus was asleep at the bow of the boat, relaxing on a cushion. The disciples were shocked. They were surprised that Jesus could sleep through such a storm. So they woke him up terrified, and they said, "Don't you care about us? We're all about to die." And Jesus simply woke up. We imagine he might have stretched and simply said, "Peace, be still." And in that instant, in that moment, the waves of the lake, the waves of the sea began to be calm. But I wonder, were the spirits of the disciples the same? Luke tells us that they were amazed at what he had done. They talked amongst each other and they couldn't imagine how he was able to do this. But there's a couple things I want you to notice about the story. First of all, at the beginning of the story, Jesus commands his disciples to get in the boat. And we can imagine that Jesus knew what was ahead of them. Jesus could imagine that the storm was going to come. He knew that life was going to get kind of rough and rocky for them. But he also knew that he was in the boat with them and that he was capable of handling anything that might come their way. And indeed, this is what happened. Jesus calmed the storm. Jesus calmed what was going on inside of them. As we stand here at the last couple days of August into September, the southeastern part of our United States is going through a devastating hurricane. And people who live in this area are familiar with these kinds of storms, but they never get easy. My friends, as we listen to this devotion, we're also going through a storm in our own life. And I wonder, do we imagine Jesus just not caring and sleeping at the bow of the boat? Or are we waking Jesus up, asking him to come to our rescue, asking him to calm the waters around us? There's another story in Matthew's gospel where Jesus also is on the lake and near the water. In this particular story, in Matthew chapter 18, also starting in verse 22, Jesus is asking his disciples to get in a boat. This time, Jesus is not going to go with them. He sends them out on the lake, and he says he'll join them up later. And he goes onto a mountaintop and begins to pray to God. In the middle of the night, the disciples are out on the lake. This time, the lake is calm and easy. There's no storm about. But they get up in the middle of the night, and they see something. They see something incredible. They see a figure walking on the water out to them. They're terrified and they're scared. Jesus says to them from the water, "Do not be afraid, it is I." And Peter, who's often the first disciple to speak, speaks up and he says, "Lord, if it is you, call to me, ask me to come." And Jesus says, "Come on the water." And Peter steps out of the boat, onto the water, and begins to go towards Jesus. His eyes are on Jesus, and he begins to walk on the water. It's remarkable. Then something really sad happens. The Bible tells us that the waves are there, and Peter is above the waves, standing on the waves, but he takes his eyes off of Jesus, and he begins to sink. And in that moment, he cries out to Jesus, and Jesus reaches down instantly, in the moment, and pulls him up. This other water story reminds us that if we want to walk on water, we must step out of the boat. If we want to walk with Jesus, It's going to require us to do some things that are out of the ordinary. If we want to walk with Jesus, it's going to require us to do some things that don't make sense. But like Peter, we can ask Jesus, if it is you, call to me, tell me to come. And when we come, it is imperative that we keep our eyes on Jesus and not on the waves. My friends, you may be in the midst of a storm today. You may be in the place where your eyes are off of Jesus. But I hope that this day will remind you to get out on the water, certainly here at this lake or in the places in your life where you can trust in Jesus to keep you afloat, to calm the storms, and to help us be better. God bless you and have a great day.